What is the? I still don't get the show. Help me understand what this means.
Yeah, Adam, what does that even?
I forgot he was in here. He doesn't know what it means.
Good. Anyway, Darializa, after my stream, went on Ali Velshi and had a really interesting conversation. Part of that was
primary night in New York.
Part of that is being plastered all over the internet.
Bigger splash than New York's 13th congressional district. It's an area that covers Upper Manhattan and parts of the Bronx, where an outsider mounted a challenge against an established member of New York's Democratic establishment and won. For the past decade, New York 13 has been represented by Adriano Espaillat, a man who's heralded as a trailblazer within his community. Before running for office, he broke ground when he challenged black political influence in Harlem and the South Bronx. In 2012 and 2014, he challenged the Democratic incumbent in his district, Charles Rangel, who had been in Congress since 1971. Espaillat lost both times, but finally won in 2016, beating out Rangel's chosen successor after Rangel retired. Espaillat's win was historic. He was the first Dominican-American and the first formerly undocumented immigrant elected to Congress. He was reelected 4 times, currently serving as the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and he's considered the dean of New York Latino politics. But more recently, Espaillat has been criticized for his support for continued U.S. aid to Israel amid its war in Gaza, and for the support that he's received from AIPAC and affiliated groups. Last night, Espaillat and fellow New York Congressman Dan Goldman became only the 3rd and 4th Democratic incumbents to lose in the primary this year. Now, the 2 others were Texas Democrats who were gerrymandered out of their districts. The candidate who unseated Espaillat is Darializa Avila Chevalier. She's a 32-year-old Democratic socialist who was recruited to run by Justice Democrats, a group committed to finding progressive challengers to unseat Democrats. Avila Chevalier was one of only 3 congressional candidates endorsed by New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani in this year's elections. And she was his biggest gamble. She didn't have the name recognition or profile of either of the mayor's other hand-picked candidates, the former city comptroller Brad Lander and the New York State Assembly member Claire Valdez. On top of that, Avila Chevalier's internet history threatened to bring down her campaign.
This also is what is so impactful, okay? The fact that Darializa was not like a known entity, that makes it even more consequential. That shows the force that the DSA can be, okay? That's what it is.
Campaign at various points. Old social media posts from a since-deleted account came back to light, including ones in which she advocated for abolishing the police. Some posts sharply criticized Democratic leaders. She once called Joe Biden, quote, a war criminal. And in a 2021 post, she wrote, quote, F. Kamala Harris. During a debate last week, she apologized to Harris after Espaillat pushed her to do so, and she said that she ultimately voted for Harris in 2024. Journalists also uncovered that she attended a controversial rally in Times Square on October 8, 2023, one day after Hamas attacked Israel. The rally was described as a gathering to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. Others criticized it for condoning the violence that Hamas had just committed, pointing to chants like, quote, resistance is justified when people are occupied. New York's Governor Kathy Hochul called it, quote, morally repugnant.
Yeah, I think Kathy Hochul is morally repugnant for, being a banner carrier at the fucking Israel parade, the literal neo-Nazi parade that they conducted with an actual out-and-about war criminal in tow. So, sorry. Not going to take any morality lessons from Kathy Hochul, or Letitia James for that matter.
Mamdani, who was then an assembly member, stayed away. Brad Lander, who is Jewish, condemned the rally and canceled his membership with the Democratic Socialists of America after the group posted about it. Avila Chevalier has defended her decision to attend that rally. New York's 13th district is solidly Democratic, so barring any other political shockwaves between now and November, she will be heading to Congress. Darializa Avila Chevalier has shown that she can win. Her victory.
Yes, that's why Lander left DSA after the October 8 rally. Once again, going back to the never-ending cycle of where is Brad Lander on this issue? Okay, yes. he was a lifelong DSA member before then too. Like he was in DSA for, like he was in DSA when I think Zohran was born. Okay, which to be fair, back then DSA was very different than what it is now. Okay, far less radical than it is nowadays, but still, I think it means something.
In particular is emblematic of changing tides in the Democratic Party. So now the question is, what will the next chapter of her story and the Democrat story look like? Joining me now is Darializa Avila Chevalier, Democratic nominee for Congress in New York's 13th District. Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I'm hoping, because you will be a member of Congress, that we will have many opportunities to have a conversation, which means the first conversation is going to be a little tough to get through because you've now moved from a hot part of the primary where things are really hot into you're going to be the next member of Congress. And everybody's now looking at you and saying, what is that going to look like? Last night, we were on air when you delivered your speech in which you said, quote, the corporate landlords and lobbies who powered our opponent's campaign knew that he didn't represent us in this district. He didn't fight for us. He represented them and he fought for them, end quote. Now, first of all,
yeah, Brad joined DSA in 1987. Zohran was born in 1991. See, I told you. Yeah. Brad Lander has been a DSA member for longer than Zohran was alive.
Have you spoken to Adriano Espaillat?
Yes, we spoke last night.
Okay. How'd that go? Because there's a rift in your district at the moment, which often happens after a primary.
I think it was a brief but, positive conversation where he congratulated me and offered support in this transition. And I think New Yorkers deserve that kind of transition, one where we're working together to deliver for them.
You have to do and say things in primaries, and then now you are the actual Democratic Party representative. That's not always the same as being a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. How do you square that?
I think I'm very proud of the campaign that I've run, one where I am presenting the vision that I have for New Yorkers here in this district. And that has always been the vision that I have for them, right? I've been very frank and honest about what that is. And even when folks disagree with my vision, I am very proud to say I will always be honest about my position on things. And even if we don't agree, I will still fight for every single person in my district because that is what they deserve. They deserve somebody who's going to fight to make sure that they have all of the resources that they need to lead a dignified life as New Yorkers.
I think you probably, and at some point we'll be done with this conversation, but you probably want this conversation to go away, but there are the social media posts.
CNN would never have her on. I think they will eventually. They will eventually. Because remember, CNN has Jamal Bowman on, right? And they used to back in the day as well. Part of the reason why they do that is because this is now a force that is represented in Congress. CNN had Claire on too. Erin Burnett had Claire on. And she had a fantastic response to some of the questions. Darializa does a similar thing here too.
You have had derogatory posts about Joe Biden.
Yes, I saw Deborah Messing wants me to be arrested. Yes, retired actress Deborah Messing is attempting to have Hasan Piker arrested for threatening to support a primary challenger against Representative Richie Torres in 2028. I mean, she's so psychotic. It's fine.
And about Kamala Harris. You did apologize for the Kamala Harris one. I guess the Joe Biden one, you did say you called him a rapist. Is that the kind of thing that just because you're...
You know what was really funny about this situation? You know who else also said that they believe the victims of Joe Biden? Or the accusers of Joe Biden? Kamala Harris. What are we doing? the best possible thing you could do in this situation is like also turn around and be like, well, you know, it's a little bit sinister, maybe a little, albeit cynical, or valid, given your actual experience and your actual perspective. But you can be like, well, really, you think at a time, you think that it's far-fetched of me to assume that a powerful white man, I'm a black woman, I'm an Afro-Latina woman, I think it's far-fetched for me to assume that a powerful white man had numerous allegations of sexual misconduct. You know who else also thought that was valid? Kamala Harris. What should have been my expectation? To be like, no, I don't believe all women, actually. I don't believe any women. Specifically women that are, you know, calling out someone who's wealthy and powerful in a position of profound power. Excuse me, you know? You could really flip the script on Ali Welshi here.
Sort of a digital native in that you do on the internet, or did you believe that, and do you believe that?
You know, I think there was a lot of misunderstandings around where my posts, why they were deleted. I deleted my account many years back because I was focused on returning to organizing and my studies. I was working on a PhD program. And I think often we're asked to really have accountability for folks who have not held political office or have political power, and don't do the same for folks who are in positions of political power. Now, all that to say, I do regret my tweets, and that's something that I think has brought a lot of division, and that's something I regret, because as an organizer, my goal is always to unify our community and deliver for our community. And I think there is this question of why is it that when folks who do not have power, political power in this instance, are being held accountable for things, we don't also hold accountable folks who do have political power, where the decisions they are making in office every single day have an enormous impact on millions of people in our country, right? And I think for folks who feel disempowered, it's important to make sure that we're getting to the heart of where that sense of disempowerment is coming
You actually
from.
said that with respect to your tweet about Kamala Harris. You said that it came from a place of you feeling disempowered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so many folks in our country feel that they don't have representation that is fighting for them, right? And that was part of why I decided to run, because I felt that abandonment.
I only knew about that lady that fled to Russia. Yeah. For the record, yeah. I mean, she was definitely. Look, I don't know what happened between her and Brandon, but she was definitely a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Okay, we can say that. It's fine, you know. That was a woke one was crazy moment. And guess what, by the way? Guess what? The media at the time straight up did not even cover it at all. Like, they barely covered it. They were like, yeah, whatever, shut the fuck up. Like, that was the liberal media straight up just went, that's fine. What is this? They're doubling down? Oh, dude, by the way, yeah, Gustavo went on Spectrum News and straight up laid it out. And it's really funny that Jamie Harrison is losing his mind over it and even boosting a far-right account in the process. Let's take a look at what he said. I know I have this coming up. You know what? Actually, I'm gonna show this afterwards.
Establishment politics that looks at my community as though it is merely statistics and not people who are worth fighting for, and not the policies that will actually better their lives. And too often we've seen folks go into office and close the door behind them. But what we need is representation that's actually going to listen to the community, hear the frustrations, and open that door and keep it propped open so that everyone can be part of their democracy.
So I want to talk to you because you are part of a group of people who want to hold people in power to account. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk to you about that with respect to Adriano Aspayat, money that has come into that campaign, including money from AIPAC-affiliated groups. But I need to set the context on that that first because of this conversation about this.
I will say one thing about my not being a straight up DSA member thing is that I do benefit from being able to stay out of internal caucus drama, and can say I love all of the DSA caucuses, the DSA left and the DSA right, equally. So that is one I think big benefit.
Rally after
As an independent media figure, okay, as an independent media figure.
October 8th.
Some of you also take advantage of that and will give me gifts. Like, you know, the groundwork beanies that you have given me, that you have showered me with. Or the, you know, different caucus t-shirts that you have given me that I wear from time to time. And then you use that to post it as though, you know, this is an endorsement of one caucus and one caucus only. Okay? It's like choosing between your children. Okay?
You have strong beliefs about Israel's targeting of civilians in Gaza, which completely dwarfed what happened on October 7th. That said, I think I'm going to guess that you agree that innocent civilians shouldn't be targeted by anybody, regardless of the reason or the grievance. And that stands for Israel, and that stands for Hamas.
Yeah, of course.
Because people have associated you with being supportive of
Hassan
what
thinks
Hamas
he's emerged, but he's really groundwork. See, even Michael from Taiwan is doing the same thing. Okay?
did on October 7th.
No, I have always been very clear that at the core of every one of my values is fighting for human dignity and human life. And the reason I was there at that rally is because I have been advocating for Palestinian human rights and dignity for most of my adult life. And knowing that historically what we have seen is that whenever there is an incident that happens in the region, there is an outsized reaction, one that costs thousands more people their lives. And that was what I was there to stand against, because it was a pattern that I had seen consistently throughout my organizing and throughout my experience in the region. I was actually in Palestine in 2014 in the West Bank, and I was there at a time where tensions were rising. And I believe it was almost either the day I arrived or the day after I got back to the United States that Israel began bombing Gaza. And over 1,400 or maybe 1,800 people were killed in Palestine and Gaza at that time. And I remember being home and scrolling through the faces and names of the people who had been killed and feeling completely powerless to do anything about it. People who looked so much like the people I had just left in the West Bank. And knowing that day that we were in a situation where something similar or bigger would come to pass, that was what I was there to stand against.
It wasn't as central an issue in your campaign as it was in the Brad Lander, Dan Goldman campaign. But the AIPAC and AIPAC affiliated money that came in against you was bigger. I mean, it was a lot of money. And you've been very critical of Adriana Espaillat's relationship with Israel and continued acceptance of funding inoffensive weapons. Tell me how that played out.
You know, I have from the very beginning been very critical of the fact that he has taken over $670,000 to his to his campaigns from AIPAC. He has taken over $115,000 from ICE contractors, over $250,000 from real estate developers that are pricing people out of our city. To me, at the heart of this is the way that money is a form of accountability and to whom that accountability is to. So the fact that he was taking money from these institutions, from these right-wing lobbies, which is what AIPAC is, it's a right-wing lobby that backs Republic.
Why is Ali Velshi seemingly very fair with his line of questioning? Because it's Ali Velshi. There's Ayman, there's Ali Velshi, and there's Chris Hayes. Those are the last three. Well, I guess sometimes what's his face is good too. Ari Melber is decent too. From time to time. But yeah, no, these are the last guys that remain on MSNBC, MSNOW, that are like fairly progressive. The rest of the squad is, I would say, all former like George W. Bush people. Like, there are a lot of former George W. Bush comms directors and stuff like that that are just, you know, staple names of MSNOW, and they're not great. Obviously, Jacob Soboroff, he's not one of the anchors, but Jacob Soboroff is great when it comes to immigration-related stuff. I know Jacob personally. I've literally been peers with Jacob at way back in the day. But I'm not talking about. I'm talking about like anchors on MSNOW. Yeah. The anti-Trump Republicans are all obviously horrible, disastrous, and they are incredibly pro-Israel. And I sometimes feel like many of them are literally to the right of Bill Kristol, which I think is unacceptable.
And Donald Trump, and then backs Democrats who purport to be progressive while voting time and time again in the interests of institutions like AIPAC. And so I was highly critical of that because
Ecuador beat Germany? God damn. That's pretty crazy.
I see the impact of that on my community every single day. When you have someone who's taking money from the real estate developers that are pricing us out, and it's no wonder then that in a district that is the second poorest congressional district in the state and by some measures the country, that it is so deeply unaffordable for folks when the rent rises to the average of $4,000 for a 2-bedroom in Harlem or Washington Heights. And so, you know, I think the fact that so much money was poured in, not only directly into his campaign, but also in outside spending, where we saw over $7 million. And we won't know how much of that was AIPAC for a number of days.
A lot of that funding came in after June 10th,
exactly.
which means nobody has to report it until the next cycle. Donald Trump talked about communists being elected last night. There were 3 of you in the congressional races, and there were 5 people who Zohran Mamdani supported in state races. All 8 of you won. How do you avoid
9.
becoming the ad for Republicans? You know, we've watched Zohran Mamdani, and he's managed it very well. We've watched Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has managed it very well. She's become a very policy-centered person. I don't think she's changed any of her views. How do you navigate this road? Because now you are a member of the Democratic delegation. You will be a member of the Democratic delegation, and you're going to appear in all sorts of people's ads, all sorts of Republicans' ads to say, this is what you're going to get if you vote for the Democrats, a communist.
You know, I think that framing is one that I've been very proud to be able to say I don't respond to, one in which I have been very intentional to say I won't be reactive. We are presenting a vision of what we're fighting for, and I think for far too...
By the way, this is, I think, the best answer that she gives in this entire interview.
I don't respond to, one in which I have been very intentional.
Yeah, I don't care about right-wing framing on my point, on my, you know, policy prescriptions, on my goals, on my opinions. I don't care, because I'm centering the working class in my politics. That's what I'm about. Thank you. Yeah. I'm centering the working class in this movement. That's the goal. That's the agenda. Who cares what they say? That's a great response.
Say I won't be reactive. We are presenting a vision of what we're fighting for. And I think for far too long, we have had politics that is reactive to what Republicans are doing. What we need is Democrats who are actually going to present a positive vision, one that sets the tone for what we should be talking about, which is the issue of affordability, which is the issue of how our budgets are moral documents. If we say that we want to invest in working people in this country, then we need to do that, and our budgets need to reflect that. If we say that we value immigration and immigration justice, we need to make sure that that is also reflective in our policy. And so I'm very proud of a campaign that we built that centers those ideals, that centers those values and that vision for what we need as a community. And that's how I'll continue to move forward in Congress. And I think that for far too long, this reactive conversation of what we should be afraid of has prevented us from being able to have a politics of hope and a politics of life that Democrats can actually identify with. When the majority of the Democratic base has been seeking for the Democratic Party to actually fight for them, that should be the language that we should be leading with.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Again, congratulations, and we hope you will continue to have these conversations with us.
Thanks for having me.
Darializa Avila Chevalier is the Democratic nominee for Congress in New York's 13th district. All right.
Bro, someone in the chat said, I'm going to be late for the turkey game. Kickoff is at 7 p.m., 4 hours from now. Okay? That's awesome. Fucking 4 hours from now.
Our candidates run as Democrats.
Here's Gustavo, the DSA co-chair, absolutely cooking with this take.
Candidates run as Democrats. We're on the Democratic Party ballot line. We contest the primaries. And when they're in the legislature, they're part of the Democratic Party caucus. But we don't agree with the way the Democratic Party establishment organizes or runs its party apparatus, and so we try to build independence by focusing on volunteer-led movement. We think that everyone should be able to be trained and to become someone who can participate in the political process, and we don't really think that Democratic Party campaigns in the establishment are run that way. And I think you really see that difference in the races like we're having tonight. And I think in terms of the agenda, there's a problem in the Democratic Party where they are funded by billionaire donors, and at the same time, they're trying to represent the working class. And in our opinion, you have to choose between the billionaire class and the working class. It's just impossible to satisfy all of them.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah, people got really mad about that. Okay. Here. A lot of people got mad at that quote or that statement. I mean, obviously, I 100% endorse it. It's what I've been saying for the longest time. When I say I have no loyalty to a brand, no loyalty to a party, and my loyalty lies with the American people, with the working class, this is what I mean. We're not trying to revitalize the brand of the Democratic Party. That's not the goal at all. We're trying to bring more people into the small d democratic process. Okay? That's it. And yes, the needs of the billionaire class is antagonistic to the needs of the working class. It's super simple.
They have a lot of negative stuff to say. There's a lot of people who have a lot of opinions. But when you prove them wrong, you really don't have to say to them.
That video clip is what New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani posted in the wake of a stunningly successful primary night for a slate of candidates he endorsed. In the lead up to the primary, the mayor made a risky move, backing 3 congressional candidates against the pull power of not just the Democratic Party, but really the institutional progressive movement of New York City. 2 of the candidates primaried sitting Democratic incumbents, which is risky. Last night, all 3 of those candidates won. As the New York Times put it in Sunday's headline, quote, Mamdani burns allies in making a big bet for Congress on the left, but as of this morning, it looks like the bet paid off. Joining me now is New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, who will be speaking with House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries later tonight. Mayor, congrats. I know my colleague Jen Psaki has leader Jeffries on the next hour to discuss what's going on. What are you looking for in your conversation with leader Jeffries tonight?
You know, I appreciate the relationship that I have with Leader Jeffries, and it's one where we're united in looking to deliver for the people of the city. And as you heard from him, we have disagreements about endorsements. And I think you mentioned a number of those candidates that I was proud to endorse, and Darializa, Avila Chevalier, and Claire Valdez, and Brad Lander. And also, at the end of the day, what we're looking to do is to deliver for the working people of New York City. And I think last night we heard from New Yorkers a hunger for exactly that kind of work being done here in our city.
You know, I obviously I'm a lifelong New Yorker, know New York politics well. I should disclose that my brother actually worked on the Lander campaign, which I basically didn't cover for that reason in the run up to this entire race. You know, when you're in your race, I think you could really say, like, you had a laser focus on affordability. You really did. You were very
You didn't want to be Chris Cuomo.
on message. Interviews where I tried to push you off the message. You kept coming back to it. You know what you're doing. I think it's much harder to make that argument about these wins last night. I covered these races pretty closely. I mean, I followed them. They weren't really about affordability. I don't think you can say there was some big difference between Claire Valdez and Antonio Reynoso. So what were they about from your perspective?
You know, I think they were about clarity, they were about conscience, they were about conviction. And what I mean by that is when you're walking the streets with Claire, one of the things that she speaks often about is the importance of fighting income inequality and how the most effective tool to do so is increasing union density. And she knows that because she's somebody who rose through the union movement, rose through UAW. And this is somebody who has also made clear time and time again that we need to have a foreign policy that is not, as Darializa would put it, investing in bombs as opposed to in babies. And I think what you've seen from New Yorkers, whether it's in Brad's race, Darializa's race, or Claire's race, is an exhaustion with status quo politics and a desire for something that actually responds to the needs that they have in their own districts. In some of these districts we're talking about, you know, especially in Darializa's case, this is one of the poorest congressional districts in the United States of America. The other night when I was walking with her through Harlem, we met a man coming out of a bodega who had his hands full with Huggies that he just bought. And in that same moment, she and I are having a conversation about how our government has spent more than $30 billion in bombs for the Israeli military to kill civilians, whether in Palestine or in Lebanon. And it just speaks to what New Yorkers are tired of and what they want to see. They want to see people who are willing to not just stand up to the federal administration, but also stand for a vision of working people at the heart of it.
There's a lot of folks, I would say, in New York who, let's say broadly, in sort of pro-Israel coalition, I think that's how they would describe themselves, who view last night as about that single issue. Basically, what they will say is, particularly if you look at Goldman and Lander, like, this was really about Israel, and it was motivated by people's feelings about Israel. And I think the pro-Israel folks would say, you know, their anger, their rage. Some even say it's anti-Semitism. I don't necessarily sign on to that, but do you think it was, like, fundamentally, is that what it was about the people and the Democratic Party supporting fundamentally or not doing enough to oppose the actions of the Israeli government over the last several years and continuing actions in Gaza?
Yes and no. Israel is Israel is an unbelievably important issue because it is the moral crisis of our generation. Okay, it's a genocide. And we watched it unfold, and we have a moral culpability here because we are American taxpayers. And America aided and abetted in Israel's genocide. However, beyond that, for the average person, for the average American citizen, the average American voter, Israel is profoundly important because it's a fantastic litmus test to see if your representative that is elected will represent your interests or represent the interests of foreign lobbies or even other corporate lobbies. So Israel is not just about Israel. It's also about healthcare. It's also about climate justice. It's also about criminal justice reform. It's about justice for migrants. It's about housing. It is about a congressperson's willingness to fight for those issues rather than their willingness to collect checks from these corporate PACs with the hopes that those corporate PACs will protect them and will protect their seats. That's why I always use it as a litmus test.
I think that played a major role. And it played a major role because New Yorkers have had to watch as tens of billions of our tax dollars have been spent on bombs that not only shred international law, but also the lives of civilians. And what they've seen is that while it is a Republican administration that is doing it now, it was also something that was bipartisan and continues to be. And I think there is a desire to see a politics of life be at the center of what we are fighting for. And, you know, I think if you're looking at Brad and his race and his candidacy, he led with such a humanity and in many ways an embodiment of what Mr. Rogers would speak about in the actions of a good neighbor. And he would speak about the fact that he is going to Congress not only to fight against bigotry, whether it be anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, but also to make clear that he is going to fight against the occupation, against the genocide. He's going to co-sponsor, as well as Claire Valdez and Darializa will, the Block the Bombs Act to stop our federal government from sending those kinds of shipments to the Israeli military. And I think that's what's in line with what so many New Yorkers are desperate to see. And all of this is all the more difficult for a New Yorker to accept when at the same time they're having trouble affording life in the nation's most expensive city. At the same time as we're greenlighting tens of billions of dollars for Netanyahu's wars, we're being told, sorry, we just can't help you make it a little bit easier.
Netanyahu's wars. All right, whatever.
To afford your rent check or your groceries or your childcare or even your public transit. And I think that what we saw is that New Yorkers were fed up with a status quo of our politics where we're stuck explaining why this is the best we're going to have, as opposed to advocating for the working person who's being left behind by that same status
That's
quo.
Bernie's worst, one of his worst qualities, man. You don't have to adopt that.
It's like trillions of dollars, depending whether you count for security. So in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you're right. There's been about $30 billion to Israel. There's lots and lots of billions of dollars that could be found for those things, even if we were to continue. In doing this, you clearly ticked off a bunch of people. You knew that. I mean, they weren't like shy about saying it, because generally the way it goes is you don't endorse against incumbents. Yeah, it really is kind of the unwritten rule in this. Tish James, who was a very vocal backer of yours when you were running for mayor, and even a backer of yours when I think it was pretty politically controversial to be so, had this to say. She said she and other political leaders she's spoken to are disappointed in Zohran Mamdani. All of us are a little frustrated with the Democratic Party, but you don't blow it up. That's what MAGA has done. What do you say to that?
I think, what is the Democratic Party if not its voters? And what we saw yesterday evening were Democrats across the city turning out and voting for a new kind of politics. And I've been clear time and time again that I believe the only majority in our country is that of the working class. And what we saw is that a focus on the working class, whether it's from Claire, whether it's from Darializa, whether it's from Brad, is the kind of focus that New Yorkers want to see. And I have a deep amount of respect for my friend Attorney General James. And I also believe that these are the kinds of candidates that we need to see in Congress, as well as the 5 state legislative candidates that I endorsed that also won yesterday evening, if we want to truly fulfill the affordability agenda. And, you know, as I'm speaking to you, Chris, it marks 1 year since I won the nomination to become the Democratic nominee for mayor of our city. And I made a promise to New Yorkers that I'd use every tool at my disposal to actually transform the city into one that they could afford. And one of those tools is using your political capital to ensure that the people who will fight hardest for that same agenda are going to be there, whether it's in Albany or whether it's in D.C. And I'm so excited to say that in yesterday's 8 different campaigns that we endorsed, we saw 8 different victories for exactly that same message.
On that point about the working class, and I just want to be clear here, like, you win, right? Like, these were like all 8 won, and different winning candidates assemble different winning coalitions, particularly in primaries. But it also is the case, and you can go down to the census tract level, or you can look at the different parts where there is a correlation between the success of the candidates you backed and higher degrees of college education attainment and even higher degrees of household income in those areas, right? I mean, you can run the numbers. The Times had them today. In the Bronx, which I know pretty well, my home borough, Darializa was lost by 30 points to the incumbent Adriana Espaillat in that part of the borough, which is a very poor part of the borough. What do you say to people who say this is fundamentally democratic social?
Darializa ran up the numbers on black voters, okay, as opposed to the lead that Espaillat had on Hispanic voters, But the major area of impact for Darializa was the white voters in the district. Having said that, however, the idea that she was like only winning because of wealthy voters is wrong. She won because she created the best coalition. First of all, these are not wealthy voters, okay? There aren't. It is a 98th percentile district. There aren't that many wealthy voters. There are voters that are, however, better off than the rest of the district. The reality of the matter is, it's still a fairly poor district because the white voters are literally also students, okay? They're not necessarily wealthy. They're just fucking students. Here's the thing. The reason why she won was because she was able to create a better coalition. That's it. She had the highest density of renters in the city, which all went to Darializa. That's number one. And number two, she had a wider margin with the black vote than Espaillat had with the Hispanic vote over Darializa. And it was like a 10-point or a 15-point swing when it came to the white voters in the district. That's why she won, because she was able to run up the numbers of white voters in the district, run up the numbers of the renters in the district, specifically black voters in the district, and also still have a decent, sizable impact with the Hispanic voters in the district, regardless of Espaillat's position. Whenever these guys turn around and say, oh, it's like, well, it's clear that the wealthy voters in the district, the gentrifiers, actually voted for Darializa, is bullshit, is wrong. Okay? It's just wrong. That's not the case. That's not what happened.
A kind of college affectation that basically, like, you talk about the working class, but really it's just a bunch of people who just got out of some college seminar who like to talk socialism.
I think that everyone has their narratives. What I'll tell you is I'm excited to be able to speak to you as...
Also, as someone who worked closely with this, on this race, with this race, I can tell you what happened. It's also the same reason why Conrad Blackburn lost. Espaillat is a 5-term incumbent. So he's been in power for a decade. He was dog shit at constituent services, which Darializa highlighted with the Mahmoud Khalil situation. That wasn't just about Mahmoud Khalil. That wasn't just about Israel. That was also highlighting how bad he is and reminding the voters how bad he is at never being there and not having decent constituent services. This is very important for politics. This is very important for maintaining your position. I'll give you another example. AOC will never be unseated in her district unless there is a complete revamp, like rewriting of the redistricting of AOC's district. She will be there for the rest of her life. Do you want to know why? Because AOC has some of the best constituent services in the entire country. Okay? Everything down to, like, my cat was, I lost my cat. My cat is missing. All the way up to, like, the running water in my business is no longer running. My landlord is fucking me over. Okay? That is unbelievably important. And a lot of people don't realize that when they're like, oh, AOC's never in her district or whatever. First of all, that's not even true. But constituent services is key to ensuring that your voters come back and vote for you. Okay? It's far more important than the ads and the AIPAC money and all this shit. And Espaillat showed that. So, can you explain what constituent services mean? Yes. For example, Adam Schiff, also known as Adam Shit, is my senator. Okay? So, as a part of his job, because senators also have constituent services. Obviously, it's the House of Representatives. Representatives are more hands-on in the district. But when my friends, my two friends that were arrested and tortured by the Israeli military on the Samud flotilla were being tortured and after being kidnapped by the Israeli military, a lot of people reached out to Adam Schiff. They reached out to Adam Schiff because we wanted Adam Schiff to demand the release of his constituents. Because those two people I'm talking about, one is Quentin Quarantino, the other one is David Adler, Progressive International. They're both Jewish, and they're both technically constituents of Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff did nothing about that. That is what you are supposed to do. You address an issue that your constituents are experiencing, one that actually has international significance, and as a senator, you have a lot of power. As a senator, you have a lot of fucking power, and you're supposed to exercise that power to defend people that you represent. He did not do so. So that's one example of like what constituent services means, right? So, I'll give you another example. Chris Van Hollen pursuing Kilmar Abrego Garcia all the way down to El Salvador. That has tremendous impact for the rest of the people that live in your district, that are your constituents. They will remember that. They will say, this guy is fighting for me. This guy's putting his own body on the line to make sure that my neighbors are safe. So, that's another example. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I was talking about Adriano Espaillat. He has dog shit constituent services. But the other reason I forgot the other reason. Never mind. I was chewing.
Someone who won more than 1 million votes in last year's election here in New York City. And what we saw is that we got those votes across New York City and across so many of the different demographics that make up our city. And when we're speaking about Darializa, who will be the first Afro-Dominican, Afro-Latina Dominican woman to represent...
Oh. I remembered. I will tell you the real reason why, like a big part of the reason why also Darializa won. Okay? This isn't to undermine her candidacy. This isn't to undermine her advocacy. But a part of the reason why was Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright's dad is a very famous black politician in New York. Okay? He's a party boss. And when, 10 years ago, Adriano Espaillat challenged the incumbent in Harlem, who was black, he did so with a lot of racialized animus. Not dissimilar to the way that he was attacking Darializa. That bad blood was so significant that even Hakeem Jeffries, who is, again, the most powerful black politician in the country, okay, a beloved figure by, not only the Congressional Black Caucus, but also a lot of the New York black politicos, right? Even Hakeem Jeffries could not get Jordan Wright's dad to fucking endorse Espaillat. Okay? Even after Espaillat endorsed Jordan Wright, who was running against Conrad Blackburn. So that's why you saw a lot of black voters in Harlem do split ticket voting. They voted for Darializa because they hated Espaillat, but also they voted for Jordan Wright, as opposed to Conrad Blackburn, our DSA pick. Now, this doesn't mean that Jordan Wright is safe in that seat. He's not. But that is precisely what took place. There were a lot of I assume, split ticket voters that voted for Jordan Wright and Darializa as well. You met Keith Wright? He dabbed you up at the poll site? Wait, what? I dabbed him up. I did not realize that was Keith Wright. Wait, that was talking to Mero? The dude talking to Mero and oh, the dude who was talking to Mero and Darializa. I didn't dab him up. No, I know I didn't meet Jordan. I know what Jordan looks like. Join DSA chat, yes. What did, Pramila Jayapal endorse Diana to get? Yeah, that's a big L. Look. I mean, she's a Congressional Progressive Caucus person. Like, it's not surprising. CPC has also endorsed Diana to get. You know, it's just how it is, unfortunately. Is DAP not dab for the love of God? Yes, it's DAP. DAP, DAP, DAP. I know. You're right. Nydia Velasquez was not helpful for my wife and I when her green card case was delayed. I went with Valdez partially because of it. Constituent services are important. Take advantage of them, chat. Yeah. CPC is so fucking fake. Pinot, progressive in name only. Do we have our own Tea Party movement and our own slanderous accusations? Pinot is awesome. You dapped me up on 135th in Lenox? You dabbed me up. Did I dab on you? The bodyguard in pink saw you embrace shooting the shit with two black guys and realized you weren't an op? I was watching vids of you reacting to true crime in 2022 and you truly look so much better. Congrats. Thanks, chatter. The fuck? Bro smoked weed on him? I did. I love Pinot, dude. Pinot is so funny. Yeah, CPC, unfortunately, is not the Communist Party of China. It's the Congressional Progressive Caucus, which, let's be real, is not very progressive, okay? I thought that CPC would be a power center, but they are, of course, very aggressively defending their incumbents because that's their job. Also, Pramila Jayapal is an interesting figure because I've often been critical of her at times, but she is literally one of the best advocates for Cuba in Congress. Like, not even a question, bar none. I will always defend Pramila Jayapal on that basis. Okay? Straight up. It don't matter that she basically a Warrenite. Also, new polls coming out of Mitchell Research. Here's what I'm going to tell you. The Republicans are highlighting Abdul. And I don't know why they're doing it, because Mitchell is a right-wing pollster that's been aggressively following the Democratic primaries. They're the ones who famously said that Abdul rose in the ranks after hanging out with anti-Semitic podcaster Hasan Piker. But this, paired up with the RNC attack ad that doesn't read like an attack ad at all, makes me feel like they're pushing Abdul because they think he'll be easier to defeat. He will be tougher to defeat, and they're fucking stupid. But we'll take those.
That district, she would not be able to win that nomination without the support of communities of color. And the same thing with Claire Valdez, who will be the first Mexican-American and indigenous woman to represent that district. She would not be there winning by 20 points if it was not also for the support of voters of color. And I think too often what happens after a race is an attempt to explain why that result happened, as opposed to listen to the voters who cast their ballot in that way. And what I heard from many voters is they do want a different kind of politics. And especially for all of the conversation of 2028 and where this party should go, I think it's wise to listen to voters about exactly what kind of politics they want to see. It's one that is much closer to what we used to see from our party in the days of FDR than what we've seen in a time when our only vision seems to be a responsive one to Trump, as opposed to one that goes beyond that.
FDR, if you ever read a biography, both charming and ruthless. An interesting combination. New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for having me.
One of the worst parts about Zohran being such a fucking nationally prominent politician is that I have, unfortunately, similar speech patterns, like constantly saying for far too long. And now I have to limit it because he says it all the fucking time. Having said that, however, I do say that a lot. I do say that a lot too. Having said that, however, ultimately, at the end of the day, for far too long, I think it's partially because I speak for so long throughout the day that it's virtually impossible for me not to constantly use similar speech patterns. Regular frequency. What else? Out and about, formative role. One must ask the question, why? Make no mistake. Eviscerated spectacularly. I love Israel. I don't say that. You mean Zohran says that. That's precisely why. Virtually impossible. Okay, guys, enough. To the best of my abilities. Oh, I do say that a lot. Fuck. It's because you read, and I say that as a teacher of writing. Yeah, I know you like the number. I say that a lot. I'm a numbers guy. I know you like the number. All right, let's take a look. Dems far left lurch sparks heated outnumbered debate.
More Democratic candidates seem to be finding success after attacking Israel on the campaign trail. All three candidates endorsed by Democratic Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani made their anti-Israel stance a centerpiece of their campaigns. Incumbent Congressman Dan Goldman, who is Jewish, lost his primary to one of those candidates. And
yeah, Dan Goldman, who's Jewish, lost his campaign to one of those nasty ones. No one cares about his background, of course. It's not relevant. It's not relevant to the conversation. A Jewish man was taken away from his seat of power.
He says his opponent's message wasn't just...
Also, it's like crazy. This is a wild thing. Like, can you imagine if we were like, Hillary Rodham Clinton defeated anti-Semitically in the primaries Bernard Sanders, who is Jewish. Like it's just funny that it only works in one direction, okay? It only works in one direction. Can you imagine if Fox News was like, Hillary Rodham Clinton demonstrated peak anti-Semitism by taking out the presidential chances of a Jewish man?
Anti-Israel, but anti-Semitic. Watch.
Outright anti-Semitism, which is on the rise, something I certainly felt during this campaign, and is something that the entire Democratic Party, not just Jews, are going to have to grapple with. It cannot just be on the Jewish community itself to defend against anti-Semitism. It is going to have to be a unified effort for...
Dog. The Jews in your district voted for another Jewish politician over you. That's not anti-Semitism. Like, this argument does not make any sense. He's like, yeah, these Jews voted anti-Semitically for another Jew over me. Like, any other situation, it would still be stupid, but you could at least, like, kind of make it stick. But we're talking about Brad fucking Lander. Like, what do you mean? In a district that is also very Jewish. This argument makes no damn sense.
Everyone who believes in equal rights and civil rights and social justice to band together and to acknowledge that this is a form of hate.
That's funny. Dan Goldman, I think Jews will not replace us. Yeah, he said Jews will not replace me. Yeah. That's funny.
And it's not just New York. Far-left candidates with similar platforms.
They always love running this line. And it's so funny because they have Nita Allam, who lost, Sue Altman, who also lost to Adam Hamawi, Junaid Ahmed, like all these people have lost already.
Running in state and federal races all across the country, many of them on your screen. And they're gaining traction in races against more moderate Democrats. Opposing Israel is just one part of the socialist platform that's dividing Democrats. Some establishment lawmakers have spoken.
Yeah, Brad Lander is hiding scared after Brad Lander's win 2 days ago.
Out against the far left's
35% off gifted subs.
rhetoric. But the DSA is reportedly plotting on ways to take their ideas all the way to 2028. Marie, let's start with you.
I knew that was coming to me. I could sense you turning.
Yeah, do you agree with this premise? Does it frighten you? Are there...
How much did Lander being Jewish factor into his decision to challenge Goldman instead of accepting a position by Mamdani? What? I don't think that played a role in anything. That's such a weird question. I don't even think you were trying to make it sound suspicious intentionally, but that's a strange question. I don't know how to answer that at all. Yeah, he didn't get a position in the mayoralty, right? And Mamdani knew that Brad is from that district and he's beloved in that district, and he urged him to do that, as opposed to the DSA cadre candidate that was supposed to run in that district. At the time, it was a little bit, not to get into too much inside baseball, but, at the time, that was a decision that was questioned, let's just say. Ultimately, it all worked out because Zohran Mamdani was, making big money moves. I'll be honest, like, I was the one who was obviously upset about the Chiose situation with Hakeem Jeffries, but he actually did the fucking money spread. Straight up. He did the motherfucking money spread. Because I thought he had the bandwidth to push for... I thought he had the bandwidth, and not Zohran necessarily, but like DSA had the bandwidth to push for Chi off of this victory, right? to try and unseat Hakeem Jeffries, even though obviously Hakeem Jeffries had like a really high approval rating in his own district. And and I think that would have ruined everything. That straight up would have ruined everything, because Hakeem would have fucking come down like a lion on every race, which he probably still put a lot of investment into, but it would have made it so much more difficult, in my opinion. Yeah. I think Zohran and the DSA moved their political capital around perfectly. They played it perfectly. I'm really proud of them. I'm honored to have played, albeit a small role, in these sequence of victories. And I mean, look, it also kind of preserved Chi's career too. This was like the thing that I was worried about more so than anything else, because I love Chi. I think he's brilliant, and I think he has an insane career ahead of him. And I was worried that this would just cut him out, because it was a huge risk. And it would have expended tremendous amounts of resources from DSA rather than running multiple races at the same time, which was the counter argument that people presented. And she ended up looking great overall, right? She ended up looking great in the end. You know, he took one for the team. He took an L for the cause, for a broader cause. And he also showed that he was a team player, a movement guy. And now he has, now he doesn't have a potential L, you know what I mean, under his belt.
Concerns emanating throughout the Democratic Party of what the anti-Semitism, how it has been fomented or has appearing? Well, look, I have lots of thoughts on this. First, I would say what we are seeing across the country is an anti-incumbency, anti-establishment movement that people, you know, in both parties are like, we want you out, we want new leaders. On this issue, look, when it comes to Dan Goldman, he was beat by a fellow Jewish politician, Brad Lander, who calls himself a liberal Zionist. He doesn't support Israel killing civilians in Gaza. He doesn't support what the Israeli government is doing in the West Bank. But for Dan Goldman to say that is anti-Semitism, look, we are all opposed to anti-Semitism. I've worked on this issue for a long time, and we need to call it out.
What the fuck? I'm watching Fox News. For a second, I was like, what channel am I looking at? What? Bro, we don't hear this from CNN. What the fuck is going on? I literally thought, I was like, what is this, Democracy Now? Like, what? She does not have the style of someone who would be on Democracy Now. What am I looking at?
When it is there, and there are some Democratic candidates who I think are there, and I really do not want to be part of my party and do not support. But someone like Brad Lander, we have to have room in this country to oppose the Netanyahu administration in Israel, to say that Israeli policy is not good.
Yeah, I know he responded to me. I quote retweeted him. He said, it's pretty obviously not an attack ad. It's the NRSC telling you they want El Sayed to win the primary because they think he's easier to beat. Do with that information what you will, but it's what's happening. Republicans want him to be the nominee, which I don't disagree with. I just don't think that he's the weakest candidate out of the three. I think he's the strongest candidate out of the three, which is why I responded and I said, perhaps the Republicans are making a huge mistake, and you are too, with your assessment that Abdul's weaker than Haley Stevens and Mallory McMorrow. Lamau. Which, of course, is Matt Iglesias. Obviously, he's fucking wrong. He's always wrong. Hasanabi, my mom loves you. Thank you. Thank you to your mommy.
Without all being called anti-Semites. And to say that Brad Lander, who is Jewish, who got a lot of the Jewish community to support him in ousting Dan Goldman, is somehow anti-Israel and anti-Semitic, that is a cheap shot. And quite frankly, it weakens the argument when we do call out actual anti-Semitism, of which there is a lot on the right.
Goldman had his money refunded at a coffee shop. My gosh.
Are you
And
going
you're
to call
talking about Brad Lander. He's
Yeah, Dan Goldman had his money refunded at a coffee shop. This is a heinous act of anti-Semitic violence. This is literally the Holocaust. Why did that happen? Oh, like he wasn't denied service at the point of entry, of course. They just realized it was Dan fucking Goldman, Israel's strongest warrior, and the coffee shop, you know, had their feelings about that and wanted to make a statement. It is pretty funny to be like, wow, free coffee, what's next? This is literally what Adolf Hitler did.
calling out anti-Semitism because he was a victim of it 48 hours ago. And that should be the focus right now. Chevalier, okay, you want to talk about...
Wait, why should that be the focus? Dude, come on. No, you want that to be the focus. Dan Goldman didn't even fucking make a big deal out of it, dude. It's so funny that he was the person who was supposedly victimized in this heinous anti-Semitic hate crime. And literally he was like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, yeah, sure, I got free coffee. I just wanted my daughter to use the restroom, so I bought something. Who gives a shit? And Fox News is like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened.